Hello and welcome to my review of the Legio Custodes with Pyrithite spears. The set of 5 spears that you see these Custodes wielding will cost you £15. So it's essentially £3 per spear. If you were to buy them with a squad of 5 Custodian Guard, this set that you're looking at here will basically cost you £50. Now that's a lot of money for 5 miniatures, £10 each. Before I look at the models individually, I want to ask the question, who can use the Pyrithite spears? They're available in the Horus Heresy, so it'll be Book 7, Inferno, not available in Warhammer 40,000 at the moment, and there are 3 units, the Shield Captain, the Heteron Guard, and the Standard Custodian Guard Squad. The Shield Captain can of course use a Paragon Spear or an Adrasite Spear. They've mislabeled it Adrasite Spear, but I think I've covered that in the Adrasite Spear review. The Heteron Guard, which are basically the inner circle of the Custodian Guard, they can pretty much use anything. And then the normal Custodian Guard, which are the troops of the Custodes, they can use those or the Adrasite Spears. I'll go through the rules, the Horus Heresy rules, the 7th edition rules later on in the video. But for now, let's have a look at the miniatures themselves. Found these more difficult to pose, I don't know why, than the Adrasite spears. Maybe I'm running out of poses, but I've got this Custodes holding the spear in one hand, but also he's got his hand on his trusty banana, Misericordia, and he's just looking ready to take that out, and maybe he's in close quarters, maybe he's peering around one of the buildings of Tizca, waiting for an ambush. There you go, so that's the one-handed. It's important to note, like the Adrasite spears, you get 2 one-handed spears and 3 double-handed spears, and they all work well with the normal Custodian Guard set. I would guess they could sort of also work with the Warden set, although the Warden set, the arms can only go kind of one way, and they're a plug and socket kind of mechanism, but I think if you trim them off you could sort of make it work. This set is what they're designed for, to go on. In terms of Horus Heresy, nothing stopping you from calling these Heteron Guard and using them as elites rather than just normal Custodes, nothing at all. So that's one Custodes. Here's another one, about to swing this, probably let go with his left hand and slice that around. Quite a nice little pose I've gone for. I've got all the Misericordias like that rather than on the front. It's just the way I've gone for it with these. So there you go. This guy, he's sort of looking down, maybe about to swing, maybe he's just swung, but yeah, he's sort of looking down. It's difficult with the Custodes because you can't really move the torsos that well on their hips. They don't even have as much posability as, say, like the Necrons, but there you go. And then this guy, he's running, he sort of looks like he's going to fall over a little bit maybe, but he's just maybe peering around a corner, about to fire this off at a tank. You could just maybe imagine him doing that, or maybe he's jumped out the back of a Cronus and is running around the side of the Cronus, about to fire a beam of melter at something. And then finally you got this guy who's running, he's got his hand outstretched. I'd like to say he's firing one off, but he's not, he's just holding it, even though I've got it in kind of like a firing kind of arc there. He's just holding the spear. Maybe I could have aimed the spear down a little bit, but he's got his hand outstretched just to sort of keep his balance, but I'm sure the suit of armour is doing that just as well. He's got more things to think about, but there we go. So some okay poses in there, I want to say. They definitely are a lot different than all the standard Custodes poses that I've done before. I haven't even got one in the classic kind of hold my spear vertically pose that I've done with the Adrasite. I've got them all in sort of like with the Pyrithite spears at sort of angles, at funny angles as well. But there you go. Yeah, I'm not really doing a size comparison, but we might as well. So next to a normal custodian, this is just to show you the difference in terms of the spear. between the Andesite and the Pyrithite. Of course, they're exactly the same length, nothing different there in terms of their length. Probably better if I sort of do it that way. They are exactly the same length, blade to blade. The only thing that's different is just the weapon itself. The Pyrithite spear does look, I say, more beefier because it's got the very familiar melter gun kind of vents in it, whereas the Andesite, and we still haven't built up kind of a phobia for these weapons yet, but they are death beams, you know, instant death ray weapons, you know, completely banned in the 41st millennium. Banned when the Emperor was around too, you know, properly. He kept them all for himself. So yeah, that's the Andesite and that's the Pyrithite. Would be nice to see the Paragon blade. I think the closest we've got to a Paragon blade is actually the Shield Captain. That's what I'd like to imagine a Paragon blade looking like. And then the one up from that, of course, is the Apollonian Spear, which of course Valdor has. So that's just a little comparison there. Compared to an Alaris Terminator, the Alaris Terminator obviously is a bit taller than the a normal Custodian Guard, a bit more of a presence as well, and obviously can have the axes. The spears are longer for the Alaris as well. So there you go. And yeah, don't get me started on the Aquilon. They're even bigger than these guys. Next to normal Space Marines, so I've got a normal Space Marine here. He is literally looking down at the Space Marine. Let's just change that camera angle for you. He is literally looking down at that Space Marine. He really is. You know, look at that. He's looking down at him, saying, you know, you're definitely not going to get past me, mate. Next to a Primaris. Primaris fare a little bit better. He's not looking down on the Primaris. Primaris is the same height, albeit the longer sort of helmet that the Custodes have. Very ornate armour. So in summary, they cost the same as the Andesite spears. It's up to you whether you want to go for the melter kind of look to them. I mean, if money's tight and your opponent is forgiving, there's nothing really stopping you from calling these Andesite spears or Pyrithite spears. Nothing stopping you from doing that with your normal Custodes. Have you ever thought about that? If you wanted to play a couple of games of Horus Heresy and your opponent is fine you using your normal Custodes as ones with these different weapons, then, you know, so be it. Have fun, have some games. Don't ever feel like you should be boxed into spending, you know, £50 on 5 miniatures. For me, I think they're absolutely stunning. And as a collector, I want to see the different models with the different looking weapons, just from an aesthetic point of view. But from a gaming point of view, it depends on your opponent. But I know what I'd do if money was tight and my opponent was forgiving. I'd mix it up and use them as the different spears. So this is my part of the review where I'll talk to you about all of the rules for the Pyrithite spears. The same rules for whichever unit you choose them to be equipped with, whether it's the Shield Captain or the Heteron Guard or your standard Custodian Guard squad. They've all got the same ballistic skill of 5, so that's not going to you know, affect the weapon. So as you know, the Guardian Spear comes in a number of flavours now. The one with just the Guardian Bolter. All of them have the Power Blade though. It's just the ranged weapon that changes. So it could be the Guardian Bolter, the Melter Beam, or the Adrathic Destructor. The Paragon Spear, the Power Blade is slightly different though, and so is the Bolter. It's got its own separate profile. The Guardian Spear with a Melter Beam is called a Pyrithite Spear. The range of that weapon is 6 inches, its strength is 8, its AP is 1, its assault 1 and melter. So it's a very close ranged weapon. It's an assault weapon. So for these guys, you're definitely going to want to be teleporting in or using a Coronis. You need to be getting these as close as possible, whether it be something with a high toughness, or a really decent save like Terminators, or a high profile target like a Land Raider, or something else with high armour such as one of the Mechanicum tanks or vehicles, or even a Knight, although they are going to be a little bit vulnerable with their sort of strength 5, strength 6 attacks in close combat. But of course they do have their invulnerable saves. You've always got to remember that. So it's strength 8 which is great, which means it's mostly going to be wounding things on a 2+. Its AP is 1, so that's going to be great against vehicles and, as I said, things with saves of 2+ or more. And it's Melter, so if it's half range or more, you double the d6. So you roll 2d6 and you add them together. So in reality, you could get strength 20, which is just crazy. I've always found Melter, you know, high risk, high reward. You know, the high risk is you're going to have to get these 3 inches away from a tank, which is scarily close to be firing some kind of high-powered weaponry at it. As such, that is the nature of Melter weapons. However, in this case, I really do think that these Melter weapons, like Melter guns, should have been range 12 inches. Melter guns are range 12 inches, and they're the same strength, the same AP, same assault. They don't look like they've got too fewer amounts of gubbins, if that's a word, for the firing and the canisters and things like that. As a Melter gun. I think a Melter gun only has 1 canister. These have got 1 canister. In fact, the actual barrel of the weapon looks a little bit longer than a Melter gun. Maybe they were maybe when they wrote these rules up, they were looking at kind of like the Inferno pistol kind of thing, which, yeah, it shouldn't really be the way you go for something such as like the Custodes. I just think that the range should have been 12 inches to put it on par with the range of the Adrathic Destructor, because as it stands, you know, this is Horus Heresy Custodes. These guys can take Melter bombs, which are still strength 8, still AP 1, and they're essentially 1 attack. You're still rolling your 2d6. They just have to go into close combat with the vehicle instead. And if you're 3 inches away, you might as well be in close combat with them. So my take on it is that it's nothing stopping you from taking the Adrathic Destructors, which have double the range of 12 inches, dealing out instant death and Armor Bane, which is your 2d6 as well, which is the same as Melter, and you don't have to be half the range. So you're rolling 2d6, you've got a potential strength there of 17. So not much difference there. And when you look at it maths-wise, you have to be 3 inches or less with the Pyrithite Spear to get your strength possible 20, whereas an Adrathic Destructor you can be 4 times that distance away at 12 inches and get your strength 17, which is still only 3 less. Yes, it's not AP 1, it's AP 2, but if you really want to cause havoc, have your Adrathic Destructors, have them fire at vehicles, and then strap some Melter bombs to the vehicle too, just for rubbing salt in the wound. That's my take on it anyway. I don't think the Pyrithite Spears, the Melter Beams, are the go-to weapon for Custodian Guard. They're very short range. You have to be within half range to get the 2d6. The only thing going for them is the AP 1. Adrathic Destructors, as I say, double the range, still a very decent AP at 2. Instant death, might I add. Armor Bane, but they do get Gets Hot, which is something that the Melter Beam doesn't get. So if you don't want that risk of getting hot, but you still want a high strength, high AP, then the Melter Beam is still a good choice. However, the Pyrithite Spears cost more points as well. So on average, it's going to cost you an extra 25 points in total for the squad if you go for the Pyrithite Spears over the Adracite Spears. So a lot to take in, a lot to think about which spears to go for the Guardian squads or Heteron Guard. I think you can get away with the Adracite Spear equipped Custodian Guard slogging it across the battlefield. I think you can just about get away with it, although I'd still try and put them in transport. But the guys with the Pyrithite Spears, these ones, I think a transport is a must, or at least strategic teleportation, because their added points cost, they're high points anyway, their added points cost and the requirement to get in very close to fire off those weapons really goes against them in some respects. Anyway, what do you guys think of the Pyrithite Spears? Do you think they're cool looking spears, or do you prefer the Adracite? And obviously games wise, rules wise, which ones have you used and which have giving you better results? Please do put it in the comments below as always. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.